answer this question. Frequently they get such a question that's found in front of you. متهيألي كلنا شايفينها ولا في حد مش شايفها؟ يا ريت لو شايفينها just tell me ولا أعمل resharing again.
لا اوكي تمام شايفاها يا مس.
شايفينها. طب اوكي. No need to reshare. طيب بيجيب لي الكويستشن متهيألي مفهوم ان they put مثلا pieces of a plant whatever in different concentrations ويبدأ يقول لي this is the mass before concentration, this is the mass after أو the length before and the length after. طيب أول حاجة بحب أتكلم عليها why they dried the pieces of onion with paper or paper towel or filter paper or whatever. Because if they have these pieces of onion عندهم droplets of water on the plant فعلى طول this will يعني change the actual mass. That's why we have to dry water. دي أول حاجة. الحاجة الثانية إن they get me mass or the length before soaking and after soaking. طب how can we get the percentage of mass؟ ساعات يجي يقول لي إن get the percentage of normal. مش يقول لي the percentage change بقى. يعني I'm just explaining how sometimes the question comes. يقول لي the percentage of normal. Percentage of normal, it means that you are going to take, for example, the final mass and you divide it by the initial mass and then times 100. يبقى in this case just 173 divided by 147 times 100. This is the mass change, the mass of normal, or the percentage increase, or the percentage of normal after the experiment is finished. طب هنا الكويستشن وده الأغلب اللي بيجي the percentage change in mass. So how can I get the percentage change? You just get after 3 hours minus before 3 hours. يبقى here I'm going to put 173 minus 147 and you divide this by the initial length or the initial mass divided by 147 and then multiply by 100. طبعا لو حطينا such calculation على الكالكوليتر على طول it's going to give you the percentage of normal and here it is. طيب the answer is كانت 17.68 something. Are you going to write two numbers after the decimal point? لا, just one number. Approximated. فالapproximation طبعا we know if it is 5 instead of this 8, if it is 5 or more than 5, then this 6 is going to be 7. That's why they wrote it 17.7. The answer here is a positive number. That's why you have to write positive 17.7. If you didn't write this positive, you lose marks. But what about the last one مثلا أو the one before أو اللي هم بالنيجاتيف دول? It means that the mass after 3 hours is less than the mass. طب هل أنا أجي أعمل كده؟ I take the bigger one, for example 100 here, 154 minus 149 divided by 154. No. In order to get يعني the final answer in a positive value, لا طبعا. This is wrong. You always subtract the initial from the final, whatever the final is, whether it is more than the initial or less than the initial, you have to subtract the initial from the final. Yani, for example, in this question, it's going to be 149 minus 154 divided by the initial means 154. By the way, the initial means the first mass before soaking times 100. The answer here will be a negative value. هما كاتبينها لنا طبعا negative 3.2. طيب I have to write, of course, negative because I have to write positive. I have to write negative. The answer here is going to be 175 minus 183 divided by 183 times 100. in order to get the percentage of norm of the percentage change. طب why change? How can I get the change? By subtracting the initial length أو mass from the final length or mass. ده بالنسبة ل such a question. طب what about the curve? Just a second بس أجيب الارrow. Let's go down. هنا بقى عندي الجراف. طبعا الجراف يا جماعة it is formed of دايما أي جراف it is formed of a y-axis and an x-axis. طب what are you going to put or to write on the y-axis and what are you going to write on the x-axis? Here we look at the investigation. According to the changes in concentration of sodium chloride or of sucrose or whatever, the percentage change is going to change. طيب يبقى this means that the percentage of change will depend on the concentration. So I call what I put on the x-axis the independent variable. Independent variable. طب why variable? Because the concentration is changing. This is variable. It is changing. It is varying. Independent means it does not depend on anything. We just change the concentration. طب what about on the y-axis? We call it the dependent variable. Why variable? Again, because it is changing, but the change of this depends on the change of the concentration of the solution. طيب here أنا بس كنت حابة أقول these two variables, the dependent and independent, because this is very important for you in the graph question. طيب هنا طبعا this graph هو they didn't draw any or write any information على ال x-axis, they put it here. These are the concentrations that were found وكان في zero كمان in the table. طيب the question here, complete the graph using your answer. It means that if you answered the previous question in the wrong way, then this question will be wrong as well. That's why you have to be sure that your calculation is correct. يعني عبد الرحمن حسبها لنا كتر خيره 4.4 negative 4.4%. it means that if I zoom this, احاول اكبرها شويه معلش. ده بيكبر كلام عبد الرحمن. طيب اوكي، يبقى I will not be able to increase the size. طيب هنا انا عندي الزيرو. Above the zero are the positive values and below the zero is the negative values. فالانسر طلعت negative 4.4. طيب احسبها ازاي؟ I have here negative 10, negative 5, 0, 5, 10, 15. It means that every small square will form how much? 5 of these. يعني من negative 10, negative 5, we have 5 small squares. Okay? يبقى دي برضو مهمة in order to know الجراف ماشي ازاي، الانترفلز بتاعتنا ايه. فهنا الانترفلز are very easy على الواي axis because they are only 5s interval between each number and the other. So I take here the negative 4.4 هتبقى اقل من ال 5. I just divide بقى ال 5 دول على تقريبا هتبقى negative 4.4 ممكن تكون near to the 5 طبعا تقريبا. for example here okay وابتدي احطها على الجراف بتاعي. فبيقول لي complete the graph using your answer. فاخد النيجاتيف 4.4 اشوفها احطها فين with which concentration. انا هنا كان عاطيها لي فوق above here. معلش هتمشي معانا بقى الكلام كله اللي هو الكونسنتريشن 200. اوكي، ف I return back to the graph and I get عند 200 I have to add and هنا تقريبا خليني احطها in red عشان تبان اكتر تقريبا هنا. And you are going to complete your graph to join it. اوكي طيب اسيبها كده؟ لا، you have to circulate عشان تبان that this is the point that you have taken and then you join the two lines. اوكي طيب انا عايزه بقى اقول حاجه هنا. what are these intervals؟ الانترفلز دي يا جماعه زي ما انتم شايفين 50s. اوكي يعني if you counted the small squares these are 10 squares. 10 10 it means that each small square resembles 5 grams per decimeter cubed. واضحه الحته دي ولا there is any doubt في الكلام ده؟ you understood كنزي وعبد الرحمن and Veronica؟
اي مس فهمتها، بس اخر حته حضرتك قلتي انها 5 ايه؟
5 grams per decimeter cubed of sodium chloride. اوكي وفيرونيكا everything is clear ولا حاباني اعيد حاجه؟
clear.
اوكي طيب في اي question تاني يا كنزي او اي حد if you found any difficulty in this homework? Any more questions here ولا بس كده؟ I think خلاص يعني everything was clear in our homework. طيب let's go now to our session and let's start here. Now today I'm going to start chapter 6. It's about plant nutrition. Let me change the color at the beginning. So, and today is the 30th. Hey, what is this? Just a second بقى، أنا مش عارفة إيه اللي بيحصل بالظبط. 100%. This is the 30th of June. So we are going to start chapter 6, which is the plant nutrition. And I'm going to remind you about what I said in our very first session, the types of nutrition. We have known before that the types of nutrition, we have two types. We have autotrophic nutrition and, of course, heterotrophic nutrition. Autotrophic nutrition means that this is a kind of nutrition where the organisms, they make their own food inside their bodies or they produce their own food. That's why we call them producers. And I told you before that the most famous producers are the plants, but of course, green plants, but of course, there are other producers like green bacteria or algae or other kinds of organisms. Here in the producers or in autotrophic nutrition, the plants, they use simple inorganic materials from nature like carbon dioxide from the air, water from the soil, in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll in order to form from the inorganic simple materials. And I mentioned before what's the name of inorganic. It means that they are not organic. But what is the organic material? Who can tell me what are the components that must be found or the elements? Yes, Kenzie.
They're made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen.
Very good, very good. And we call them complex materials, okay? So here, the plants, they are going to take from nature the inorganic simple materials, carbon dioxide and water, and they will form with it an organic complex material, which is glucose. So what about the heterotrophic nutrition? Here, the organisms, they get ready-made food, or they depend on other organisms in getting their food. They cannot make their own food by themselves, like, for example, animals like fungi, and they feed on organic materials already made in other organisms. organic complex materials. For example, they feed on plants which form the organic complex materials already. Animals, for example, like herbivores, they feed on plants. The carnivores, they feed on herbivores, and the omnivores, they feed on herbivores and plants as well. Right. Now let's start our plant nutrition. And I just said that they are called producers because they produce their own food. The process by which the plants make their own food, this is called photosynthesis. Now, what is the meaning of photosynthesis? Photo means light, and synthesis means manufacturing or making food. It means that they are making their food out of sunlight or the light energy coming from the sun. And the plants, they manufacture or they synthesize a carbohydrate, of course, which is called glucose. We have taken carbohydrates and we knew that this glucose is a kind of monosaccharide, the simplest kinds of proteins. Right. How can the plant make this glucose? We used to know that there is carbon dioxide plus water. Of course, in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll, this will give glucose. Do you have to know this? Of course, and oxygen. Do you have to know this symbolic equation? Yes, you have. In the test, if they asked you for the word equation, never write symbols. You have to write carbon dioxide plus water, all in words. No symbols at all. And if they asked you for symbolic equation, then you have to write all in symbols. Like, to complete this equation, we have to balance it. So the plant uses 6 carbon dioxide molecules with 6 water molecules to produce 1 glucose molecule with 6 oxygen molecules. You have to write these 6s as well, and this is called a balanced equation. It means here that the light energy is used to combine the light energy from the sun, of course. It is used to combine carbon dioxide with water in order to form glucose. And you can see, as you can see, that glucose, الماتيريالز بتاعته, they are found in carbon dioxide and water. Nothing is brought from outside. Just what the plant absorbed or has taken in will be changed into another form by combining both carbon dioxide and water together to form this large molecule, which is glucose. But what about chlorophyll? Chlorophyll must be there. And what's the importance of this chlorophyll? Chlorophyll, if I want to describe what is this, I'm going to say that the chlorophyll is a plant pigment. And it is green in color. But does this mean transducer? Your information are very wide, ya Abdurrahman. Thank you. It's green in color. Does this mean that are there other colored pigments in the plants? Yes, there are. But you do not have to know them in OL. There are other pigments that are yellow in color and orange in color, and they share in the process of photosynthesis. But of course, chlorophyll is the main material that will be used in photosynthesis process because it is the material that is going to trap the sunlight. So chlorophyll is the green pigment. Let me write this word. Pigment is like a stain or a material that has a color. And it is found, of course, in the chloroplasts of the plant cell. But what are the chloroplasts? Chloroplasts are just organelles, and they are found inside the green parts of the plant. I'm going to show you the components of the chloroplast now. And the chlorophyll is gathered here in certain stacks like this, and these stacks, they are full of chlorophyll inside the chloroplast. They are green in color because they contain chlorophyll. So this is, of course, a very poor drawing for the chloroplast. I'm going to show it to you now. Right. When the sunlight falls on this chlorophyll, suppose this is the sunlight here, and it falls on the leaf, so the sunlight is trapped by the chlorophyll that is found inside the chloroplasts, and then energy, this light energy, of course, is then released by the chlorophyll in order to allow the binding of carbon dioxide together with water to form glucose. When carbon dioxide is bound with water in order to form glucose, we do not only need, of course, I did a mistake, a terrible mistake. I just told you, don't write this and that. 06. So in order to bind them, we do not only need the sunlight, but also we need some enzymes. We have already taken or learned something about the enzymes, and we said that, and we know that they are catalysts or biological catalysts to speed up the chemical reactions. This is a very important chemical reaction. The plant must form carbon dioxide, oxygen and glucose all the time. So that's why these reactions have to be very, very fast. That the speed of the chemical reaction is performed by these enzymes. That's why I always say that the photosynthesis is not just one chemical reaction like this. It's a group of chemical reactions, as you are going to learn, inshallah, in A2 when you continue, سواء بقى Excel or Cambridge, you are going to take photosynthesis in details to see that they are multiple chemical reactions that have this final equation. Type. Of course, the sun, it produces heat and light. And both heat and light, they are forms of energy. At the beginning of photosynthesis, the process relies on the light energy of the sun. And in another step of photosynthesis, it relies on the heat energy of the sun. But let's take only the light energy. Right. If I drew the sun like this, and it produces light energy. And we already know from your physics that energy can be changed from one form to another. So here in photosynthesis, this light energy, when photosynthesis ends to form glucose, so the light energy is going to be changed into chemical energy inside this glucose molecule. Type, what does this mean? Let me write the glucose molecule, or according to its structure. We have 6 carbon atoms. These are the 6 carbon atoms, 4, 5, and 6. They are not detached from each other. They are attached together, or they are linked together by energy. This is a kind of stored energy. This stored energy forms what we know as the bond, or the covalent bond. This means that the energy of light coming from the sun is going to be changed into another form of energy to bind the carbon atoms together. And of course, the rest of the glucose molecule, or the hydrogen and OH, they are going to be attached. But the main attachment is the attachment between the carbon atoms. But why is this the main attachment? As I told you before, which element is the most important element in organic molecules? Yalla ya Abdurrahman, will you answer this question? Yani Kenzie said that all the organic molecules, they have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. What is the most important element of these three? Excellent, طبعا. That's why the most important bond or binding between the elements are the bonds in between the carbon atoms. And the bonds, they are formed of energy or stored energy. And because these bonds or this energy is stored in chemical materials, that's why we call it a chemical energy. The chemical energy is a kind of energy that can be stored. And if we want to respire, then we have to break these bonds in order to release the energy out of them. Because we know that in respiration, we respire to produce energy in order to be used. In respiration, as we are going to take later, that these bonds are broken down, so this stored energy is going to be released out. This is the meaning of light energy changed into chemical energy in a glucose molecule. Type. What about the main part of the plant that performs photosynthesis? Of course, we know that photosynthesis is performed by the green parts of the plant. We have leaves and we have the stem, but which is more important? Which of these? It is the leaf, of course. We say that the leaf is the main organ that is responsible for photosynthesis. That's why we have to know the structure of the leaf. From outside and from inside. Now, let me start from outside and let me add this picture to show you. Of course, everybody knows the leaf. I'm going to close the chat box now. It hides a great part of my folder. Now, here is the leaf. Now, suppose that I have the stem here. This is the stem, and the leaf is attached to it. The leaf is attached to the stem with this stalk, which is called the petiole. If you followed the petiole, you are going to see that it is extending to the inside of the leaf. Extending as what? As a raised area, and it can be seen from the lower surface of the leaf clearly. This raised area is called the midrib. Mid means in the middle of the leaf. Rib, like the ribs that we have. So this is a midrib, and inside this midrib, there are very important structures that I'm going to explain now. Now, this midrib has branches like this, or a network of branches which are called the veins. Now, what about all this shape, flat shape? It is the blade of the leaf. Okay, the flat part of the leaf is called the blade, and the blade is connected to the stem by the petiole. There is another name, by the way, to the blade. It is called lamina, and both words are written in the book, so you have to know both of them. This blade is flat, it is thin, it is very broad. Can anybody tell me why is it flat and broad? Veronica, you didn't answer. Why the leaf is flat? And this is a leaf of flowering plants, of course. Why is it flat and broad?
Because the flatness makes it have a bigger surface area to collect as much sunlight.
Excellent, excellent. But Kenzie, why is it very thin? Do you know?
No.
Yes. You don't know?
No, I don't know.
Okay. طيب بصي بقى, it is very thin also to be able to absorb أو easy absorption of sunlight, and also for diffusion of gases. We have taken diffusion, and we know that diffusion is better or it is faster when there is a short distance traveled by the gases. Remember this? In diffusion, when I said that one of the factors that affect or that allow diffusion to be faster is a short distance that is traveled by the gases. That's why when the gases enter through the leaf, they pass very quickly to the cells because the inside is very, very thin, or the whole leaf is very, very thin. Type. But what about this midrib? What is found inside the midrib? I'm going to draw it in black. And of course, here are the veins or the network of veins and venules, like this. What is found inside this thick structure, or the midrib? You can see, of course, I told you before that you can see better the midrib in a better way when you flip or when you turn the leaf and look at its lower surface. It is protruding to the outside. Inside here, which is the continuation of the petule, inside here we are going to see there are vessels or channels through which the water passes coming from the stem. We have already known that water is absorbed from the root hair cells by osmosis, and then water is going to rise from the root to the stem to reach the leaves by certain channels, and we already knew their name. Who remembers the name of these water channels? Abdurrahman, can you remember the name of these channels? If you're not sure, say I'm not sure. Okay, they are called the xylem vessels. Remember when we have taken before the organization and the special organs, and I told you على الزايلم وقلت إن ده xylem tissue. Remember this? And there is another, يعني this xylem, it carries water from below upward, from the roots upward to the leaves. We are going to take this in details. Don't, never mind, don't worry. This xylem, they are just channels to carry water and minerals. And there are other channels that carry the food of the plant below in the stem. Yes, not only the xylem. I'm going to complete now. There are other channels found here just beside the xylem, and they are called the phloem channels. And the phloem, it carries the food of the plant, or glucose, after changing to other materials I'm going to tell you about them now, carries the food of the plant to the rest of the body of the plant. In the midrib, there are xylem and phloem. Both of them together, they are called the vascular bundles. Bundles means collections. Vascular means channels or vessels. So if I have several xylem vessels like this together, because there are several xylem vessels in the stem, starting from the root to the stem to the leaves, in order to bring more and more water and minerals to the leaves to make photosynthesis. These are all together, they are called a bundle. Bundle means a group or a collection. And of course, the phloem is the same. If this is the phloem, for example, vessels, this is one, this is another phloem, another phloem, and all of them, they are called bundle. A bundle means a collection or a group. What's the meaning of vascular? Means channels, okay? Or in other words, we call them vessels. Like the blood vessels, they are just channels that transmit the blood or transfer the blood from one way to another, or from one organ to another. Here, these are vessels or channels that transport water, minerals, and food to the leaf, or from the leaf. Of course, these vascular bundles, they are just responsible to carry substances to and from the leaves. But this is the external structure of the outer structure of the leaf. What about the internal structure of the leaf? How can we see the internal structure? Now, I'm going to tell you what do we do exactly. We just cut the leaf like this, transverse section or transversely. This is called a TS, means a transverse section. We cut the leaf like this. I'm explaining them now, ya Kenzie, in the internal structure of the leaf. I'm going to explain them now, but I'm just telling you now, how can I see these internal structures? Here we just cut the leaf horizontally like this or transversely. This section, when we cut anything transversely, is called the transverse section. And we are going to take a very small or very thin sample like this and put it under the microscope. Now, what am I going to see? You are going to see this. Of course, this is a drawn picture that I'm going to show you. Here it is, to show you the inside of the leaf. Now, if you can see, this is the upper surface of the leaf, and this is the lower surface of the leaf. And this is what's found in between. Upper surface of the leaf is that what you see in front of you when the leaf is found on a tree. It is the upper surface facing the sun, while the lower surface, of course, it's facing the soil. But if we took a transverse section and we looked under the microscope, I'm going to see that this is the upper surface and this is the lower surface. Both the upper and the lower surfaces, they are called the epidermis. This is the word. For the upper surface, we call it the upper epidermis. For the lower surface, we call it the lower epidermis. Both the upper and lower epidermis, they are formed of one layer only of cells. Only one layer. This is one cell, the other one forming one layer, and this is another one layer. But again, why one layer of cells? And by the way, the upper and lower epidermis cells, they are transparent cells. You're going to tell me, but they appear green. The green color is coming from the layer just beneath or just below the upper epidermis. But why these are transparent? Yes, Kenzie. Why the upper epidermis and the lower? But let me mention something about the upper only. Why is it transparent? There is a reason, of course, for this.
Because they contain chlorophyll.
Okay, طب why?
Or chloroplast.
Why? عبد الرحمن قالها. To allow the sunlight to pass through. Transparent, it means that I need the sunlight to pass without being absorbed, because I want the sunlight to reach the cells under or beneath the epidermis. Here, as you can see also, that the cells, they are closely packed together, or they are closely fitting together. And by the way, the upper epidermis is covered with a waxy layer. Remember when I told you that there is a layer called chitin or cutin? Here it is called cutin. It differs in, there are little differences or unnoticed differences between the chitin and the cuticle. It is called cutin, or you can say cuticle. This is the word cutin, and cuticle is written in front of you here. This layer is very, very important because it protects the upper surface of the upper epidermis, and also it is a waxy layer that helps to reduce the evaporation of water from the leaves. الواكسي layer يا جماعة they are waterproof layers. So they prevent the evaporation of water from the upper epidermis. طيب الupper epidermis again it protects the inner surfaces or the inner cells of the leaf. Now what about the lower epidermis? Here it is. Now again it is formed of one layer of cells, but there are holes in between each group of cells. There are holes. This is one of them only, and these holes they are called stomata, and stoma is the singular word, stomata, plural. But why are these stomata found? These stomata are found in order to Veronica, what's going to pass through these stomata and what's going to get out? Do you know?
The oxygen's gonna get out
And
the carbon dioxide is
very
gonna go
good,
in.
excellent. This means that the stomata, they are for the entry of carbon dioxide and exit, or allowing the oxygen to get out after the photosynthesis is performed. Right. Why the stomata are high in number of stomata on the lower surface than on the upper surface? Because the stomata are found more on the lower surface to be away as much as possible from the heat of the sun. Yani this is again a protection to the plant. Because if the stomata are found on the upper surface, so water is going to evaporate from them easily. So the leaf is going to dry out and die. That's why the stomata, they are more in number on the lower surface of the leaf. There are very few numbers of stomata on the upper surface, but mostly they are found on the lower surface. Type. What's the structure of these stomata? The stomata, and what allows the stomata to open and close? We know that stomata, they open during the day and close during the night. They open during the day because the sunlight, the sun is shining, so the plant is, or the leaf is receiving sunlight, so it has to receive carbon dioxide as well. That's why the stomata have to open during the day. فالstomatal opening, it is guarded. I'm going to show you this picture again, but I have to show you the picture of the stomata, of the stoma, and then I return back to the rest of the structure of the leaf. Now here, this is a stoma. All this structure is the stoma. And these are the cells of the lower surface. It means that we are looking at the lower surface from below كده. Here, this stoma is guarded by two cells. This is one cell and this is the other one. And because they guard the opening and closure of the stomata, they are called the guard cells. Okay? The guard cells, they are normal plant cells having a nucleus, cytoplasm, chloroplast, cell wall, organelles, vacuole, everything is found in the guard cells, normal plant cells. So during the day, these guard cells, they allow the stoma to open, and during the night, they are just closed like this, as if they are pushed like this in order to close. And the stomatal opening, I'm going to draw it here, will not be found. It is a closed stoma. The stomata, they open during the day and close during the night, and opening and closure is controlled by the action of the guard cells. Let me return this again. Here. Now, what about the layers in between the upper and the lower epidermis. We have this thick layer, and this layer is called the mesophyll layer. The mesophyll layer is formed of two types of cells, but both of them, they are mesophyll cells, but they differ in shape, and they differ in their components. Yani, for example, these cells are nearly rectangular, and according to their shape, they call them. This shape is called palisade. It's not very clear here. Palisade. So because they are palisade in shape, we call them palisade mesophyll cells. And the layer is called palisade mesophyll layer. These cells are the main cells that are trapping the sunlight. Can you see the amount of chloroplasts? A great amount of chloroplasts. So what is this, Ya Abdul Rahman? What is this that I'm pointing at? What is this empty space in the middle? Of course, it is the vacuole. And I said before that it occupies most of the plant cell, and what is surrounding the vacuole is the cytoplasm containing all the organelles, including the nucleus. And as you can see, that because the vacuole is occupying most of the cell, it pushed all the other structures to the sides. Here is the nucleus. It has a gray color like this, while these are the chloroplasts. طبعا they just drew the chloroplasts because they are most important organelles now in photosynthesis. Right. What about the layer below? This is again a part of the mesophyll layer, but the cells, they are nearly rounded, and there are air spaces, wide air spaces in between. Because there are air spaces like this, so this layer is a spongy layer. Yani if you have a balloon full of air and you are going to compress it and leave it, it acts like a sponge because air is found inside. Here the same happens. Here are the cells, and there are very wide air spaces in between them. That's why it is called the spongy mesophyll layer. And the cells are called the spongy cells or the mesophyll. The spongy layer, the cells contain chloroplasts as well, but not as much as the palisade layer. And here comes a question, Yakenzi. Why the spongy layer has less amount of chloroplasts? You know? Why the spongy? That you weren't here? She left. Kenzie, I just noticed that you logged out. You were disconnected.
يس دكتور كان في مشكلة في الانترنت.
طب what did you miss؟
عند أول ما حضرتك بتيجي عند الميزوفيل.
من الأول خالص؟ طب أوكي. يبقى the layer in between the upper and the lower epidermis is called the mesophyll layer, and it is formed of two different kinds of cells. These cells that are towards the upper epidermis, they are called palisade cells, and they form the palisade mesophyll layer. They are full of chloroplasts, while the layer below it, again, a part of the mesophyll layer, and it is formed of nearly rounded cells and containing wide air spaces in between. Yani the air is going to collect here, carbon dioxide and oxygen, the air in general, because yani carbon dioxide does not enter alone, it's air. And carbon dioxide only is going to enter the cells. Now, here we call these air spaces because they are filled with air. That's why this part is called the spongy layer, because when you find air in between the cells, so this gives them a spongy touch or a spongy texture. And I was asking you a question. I couldn't know that you logged out. Here there are chloroplasts, but the number of chloroplasts are much less than the number of chloroplasts in the Palisade layer, and I was asking you why. Why there are less chloroplasts in the spongy cells, less than those found in the Palisade cells?
Miss, you mean there's more chloroplasts in the spongy cells?
Less chloroplasts than those of the Palisade, as you can see.
In order not to let the water evaporate?
The chloroplasts, they have to do anything with evaporation of water?
No, because they trap more sunlight.
Yes. Palisade layer, it traps more sunlight. Type Veronica, why the Palisade layer will trap more sunlight? Not because it contains more chloroplasts. No. Why? It traps more sunlight than the spongy.
Because the cells are larger.
No, this is not the reason. What is the position according to the sun? Are they nearer or farther from the sunlight, the Palisade? Yes, of course, because they are nearer to the sun. Of course, you're going to tell me, but the leaf is very, very thin. Yes, I know, but although it is thin, but there are some cells that are nearer to the sun and others are just below them. Yani, somewhat or somehow away from the sunlight, or they do not receive as much sunlight as the Palisade cells. These are questions, by the way, that come in the exams, that why the spongy layer does not contain more chloroplasts, because they are away from the sunlight, not the Palisade. Why the Palisade contains more chloroplasts? Because they are nearer to the sunlight, so they will trap as much sunlight as possible. But what about this? These are the xylem and the phloem I just told you about. This means that here is the midrib, or one of the veins, because I told you before that this is the petul, this is the midrib, and here are the veins and venules, or the network of veins that are branches of the midrib. It means that the xylem and phloem are found in the midrib and are found in the veins as well. Why? In order to deliver water and minerals to every single part of the leaf, in order to make photosynthesis, the highest amount of glucose to be formed. And of course, the phloem is found in these areas to take away the food to deliver it to the rest of the plant. Because of course, we know that the plant is formed of cells, and each cell needs to nutrition, like glucose, for example. Here, the xylem and the phloem, they are found in this area. This area means that this is the area of either a vein, as the picture says, or the midrib. Okay, or the venules. Venules are the branches of the veins. Yani this is a vein. So if I put a branch like this, this is the venule. The word venule is written like this. Venule is a small vein. Okay, right. What do the xylem vessels, Ya Abdurrahman, carry? I just mentioned them. What do they carry? The xylem vessels, they carry what? They carry, or they transport, excellent, water and mineral ions, or you can say minerals only, or ions only, or mineral salts. ions. طيب Kenzie, what does the phloem carry? Or the phloem vessels, what do they carry? Or we do not call them vessels, by the way, we call them tubes. What do they carry?
The water.
لا, الxylem carries water. The phloem carries. Let me remind you. What does the plant make with water and ions and carbon dioxide?
Glucose.
Glucose, طبعا. But
Yes.
do you know, because I just said that the food of the plant has to be carried. Okay, يا عبد الرحمن. بيسبقني دايما. The food of the plant has to transport or translocate the food. لا كنت كاتبها correct at the beginning. The plant has to distribute the food على all the cells of the plant in order to respire, to gain nutrition, to grow, whatever. The phloem, it does not carry glucose. The glucose is going to change into sucrose and amino acids. And these are carried by the phloem. But why the plant does not carry glucose, or the phloem does not carry glucose? Because glucose is very reactive. Yani if there is glucose as such in the plant cells, so the cells are going to use it in respiration very, very quickly. And we do not need this. Now, here, if this is photosynthesis, for example, and the glucose is formed, glucose is used in several aspects. The first, or the most important aspect, is respiration. But if the glucose was transported as such glucose, it's going to be used up in respiration of the plant very quickly. And we do not need this. Do you know why? Because the plant is very, very scheduled. يعني حاجة منظمة جدا. Part of the glucose that is formed is used for respiration. The other part is going to be used, وحضروا نفسكم هنا للquestion, to be أو to change into amino acids. كله بيفكر إيه الquestion. Another part, وطبعا من الامينو acids later on the proteins are formed. Another part of glucose is going to change into fats, or I'd like you to call them lipids. Another part is going to form the DNA of the plant, of the chromosomes. And the rest is going to be changed into sucrose at the beginning, and then it is carried to where the sucrose will be stored. طيب, Veronica, what is the material that is stored in the plant out of glucose? What does the plant store?
What do you mean?
يعني the plant stores a certain organic material or organic molecule. What are these organic molecules that are stored by the plant? They are called? يعني when I was explaining biological molecules or the molecules of life, I said that the plants store something and the animal stores another thing. What are the materials stored by the plant called?
Starch.
Of course, thank you, Veronica. Thank you, Kenzie. Now, Kenzie, in animals, what do they store?
Glycogen.
Very good. The sucrose that is formed from glucose, because ya Abd al-Rahman, what is the sucrose formed of? This is a disaccharide, of course. What it is formed of? Fructose and? Very good. It means that this glucose is going to combine with fructose in order to form the sucrose. As I just told you, whenever there is glucose alone, the plant is going to use it quickly in respiration. But how can the plant do the other materials from glucose? That's why glucose has to be changed quickly as soon as it is formed into sucrose, and then later on it's going to be stored as starch. Type. Kenzie, what do the plant need, which element the plant needs to change glucose into amino acids and then protein? What's the missing element here? Oh, excuse me?
Because I can't hear you. Can you repeat the question?
Okay. Here, the plant forms glucose and changes it into amino acids. What is needed by the plant to change glucose into amino acids? What's the element that the plant needs? If you cannot remember, no problem. I'm going to remind you right now.
بص مثلا مش فاهم question قوي يعني برضه.
طيب البلانت عامل جلوكوز بيحوله بعد كده لبروتين، بس طبعا في الاول لامينو اسيد because this is the small molecule that's going to form protein. فالجلوكوز is formed of certain elements, okay? Which element is needed in order to change glucose to amino acids? طب let me ask you something. What are the elements that are forming glucose? You answered this.
The elements we mean the carbon, hydrogen,
carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen means CHO. If I want to make proteins, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and
nitrogen.
Nitrogen, طبعا. So the plant will need nitrogen. But what about if the glucose changed into fats? And we know that fats, they are CHO again. Only that many molecules of glucose, they are going to form the fats without the need to absorb anything from the soil. Yani for making amino acids, the plant has to absorb nitrates, which are salts of nitrogen, in order to form amino acids and then proteins, because we need this nitrogen. But if the plant needs to make lipids or fats that are formed of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen only, the difference between them is that the fats are much larger molecules than glucose. So just hundreds or even thousands of glucose molecules are going to change into fats. We do not need to absorb anything more. Type Abdurrahman, if the plant needs to form DNA, which elements are needed? Again, I'm going to write CHO. Which elements? Two elements. What are they? Very good. Nitrogen and phosphorus. عارفين لو افتكرتوا الCHO, CHO, CHON, CHOMP, you will never forget these elements that are needed by the plant to change glucose into other components. Okay, here, because glucose is the material that is formed by the plant, it is also the most important product that will allow the plant to form all its needs, as you can see here. Type, what about the starch بقى? The starch, it is stored in parts of the plant, as I told you before, in the white parts of the plant, they store starch. وعلى فكرة, don't write this color in the test مثلا. I'm just telling you that any part of the plant is white, which is white, is storing starch. This is not written in the book. ده للhigher grades. if the plant needs extra glucose, this starch is going to be broken down to form glucose, because when I was explaining starch, I told you that they are formed of thousands of glucose molecules that are joined together. If the plant needs more glucose, it's going to break the starch molecules to release the glucose to be used. Type. For the leaf to make photosynthesis, it has to be adapted, or there must be certain adaptations in the leaves in order to perform photosynthesis. So what's the meaning of adaptations? It means that they must have certain changes in their structure other than the other parts of the plant. يعني مثلا الروot, they absorb, or the roots, they absorb water and minerals from the soil. So they must be adapted to this function. That's why the root hair cell, it has a certain shape. But what about the leaf? It has to be adapted in order to perform its function. Type. We know that the function of the leaf is photosynthesis. So how will the leaf be adapted in order to perform this photosynthesis? In other words, what are the changes that are found in the leaves in order to allow this photosynthesis process to happen? The first adaptation, or the kinds of adaptations, are for absorbing or for obtaining carbon dioxide, because the plant needs carbon dioxide in order to make photosynthesis. So carbon dioxide must enter inside the leaf. What are the changes that are found in the leaves to allow them to obtain carbon dioxide? Now, we know that, as I just told you, that the air spaces in the mesophyll spongy layer, the air spaces, from their name, they are full of air. The plant, or the air, does not choose carbon dioxide and push it through the stomata. No, the air is going to enter through the stomata. And we know that air is a mixture of gases. We have nitrogen, we have oxygen, carbon dioxide, water vapor, and other gases. But carbon dioxide is the only one needed for photosynthesis. So all the air, the components of air, will enter to the air spaces, but only carbon dioxide is allowed to enter the cells by diffusion. The normal amount of carbon dioxide in air is very low. Who knows what's the normal amount of carbon dioxide in air? In atmospheric?
0.04, I think.
Very good. Very good. But what's the amount of nitrogen? 79%, oxygen 21%. This means that carbon dioxide is nothing if compared to the other gases. The amount of carbon dioxide in air is very, very low. That's why when air enters the stomata, so the leaf has to be very efficient to absorb carbon dioxide only, which has very low percentage. The leaf shows certain adaptations to absorb only carbon dioxide, or to allow air at least to enter. Now, if you can see the stem and the leaves, they are found like this. The leaves, they are held out in air by two parts, the stem and the petiole. So the presence of the stem will allow it to hold the leaves, and the presence of the petiole will allow the stem to hold the leaves in a horizontal position in order to be able to trap not only sunlight but also gases. Also, the leaf has a large surface area in its blade. What else? The presence of stomata. Of course, this is very, very important. The leaf has stomata in order to allow air to enter, and then carbon dioxide is going to be the only gas that enters through the mesophyll cells. These are called adaptations so that the leaf can obtain carbon dioxide, and I must never forget طبعا air spaces that are found inside in between the spongy mesophyll layer that I just showed you. The wide air spaces like this. So when the air enters, so it collects from the stomata, it collects in these air spaces, and then only carbon dioxide is allowed to enter by diffusion. Now, what is the next adaptation? The other adaptation, or other adaptations to obtain water, of course, and minerals. For obtaining water and minerals. Type. From what I have explained, who can tell me what are the adaptations that are found in the leaves to obtain water and minerals? Veronica, can you answer this question? Of course you can. What are the adaptations in the leaves that allow them to receive or to obtain water and minerals? What is found in the leaves that is not found in any other part of the plant?
Miss, are you talking about the shape of the leaf or something inside?
Something inside the leaf, and it is connected with the same thing in the root and the stem. Yani they're all connected together. Can you remember the name? If you cannot remember, never mind. I just said it today. Yani I said it once before, but I haven't explained it.
Is it the Xylem?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Veronica. Thank you, Kenzie. Xylem. So this is an adaptation. Water, of course, is obtained from the soil by the root hair cells, and these root hair cells, they carry the water and minerals to the inside of the cells of the root, and then to the xylem of the root, to the xylem of the stem, to the xylem of the leaves, in order to deliver or transport water to the leaves in order to make photosynthesis. طيب, Abdul Rahman, how, if this is the xylem of the leaf, for example, خليني أحطها like this, like the picture. This is the xylem transverse section, okay? Yani it is connected like this to the xylem vessel. And here is a transverse section of the xylem. And here is water. And here are the mesophyll cells. How can water pass from the xylem to the mesophyll cells? By which process? كنزي على طول she raises her hand. هسألك ما تقلقيش. osmosis أهو قالها. Thank you. بصوا يا جماعة, any passage of water must be by osmosis على طول. Okay, but of course this is an osmosis process. طيب, كنزي بقى. This is an adaptation طبعا. The next adaptation, of course we need, what do we need more? Sunlight. يبقى for obtaining sunlight. Kenzie, can you tell me what are the adaptations for obtaining sunlight? How is the leaf adapted to gain as much sunlight as possible?
I think, Miss, the thinness of the leaf allows the sunlight to penetrate through the cell.
Very good. What else? انت اللي هتشرحي النهارده. يبقى thin leaf. Okay. What else?
I think also in the mesophyll cell, the clone paths are arranged to get the more sunlight as possible as it can.
Excellent. What else? So tell me about the external shape of the leaf. What's missing here? Thin leaf and
Thin leaf and
from outside.
according, I think, to the surface area.
Yes, means that it is broad and flat. Okay. Yes, thank you. كفاية عليك كده حرام بقى. being flat and broad allows the leaf to be exposed to the sunlight, and being thin, this will allow, of course, the light to penetrate through the leaf in order to reach the mesophyll cells. Kenzie also mentioned something about the chloroplasts that are found in the mesophyll layer type. I'd like to ask مين فيكو بقى Veronica, how are the epidermal cells, or how is the upper epidermis adapted so that the sun rays can reach the mesophyll layer? What's the adaptation here of the upper epidermis, or the even the lower?
It has cells which absorb sunlight.
I couldn't hear you. Yani the mesophyll, the epidermal cells, the upper epidermal cells, I said that they have a certain description so that the sun rays are going to penetrate immediately to the mesophyll. Can you describe them? Let me help you.
Their location in the plant.
Okay. How many layers of cells?
Single layer.
One, of course. And do they have a color? Are they green?
No, they're transparent.
Very good, very good. So one layer of epidermal cells, and they are transparent. This is very, very important as an adaptation. And now let me mention the last adaptation, which is that the leaves, they are held in a horizontal position. As I just told you that there are two factors that help this horizontal position, the stem and the petiole. They allow the leaf to be in a horizontal position, أو كمان in the leaves, they are arranged in such a way on the branches so that all the leaves, they can receive sunlight. For example, if I have a branch like this, you can see that the leaves are arranged in such a way that all of them are receiving sunlight. Yani not one in the shade and the other one in the sunlight. No, they are all, or nearly all of them, exposed to the sunlight. But what if the plant is found in the shade, the whole plant, or a plant is planted in the shade? So we are going to see that the size of the leaves will be bigger in order to be able to trap as much sunlight as possible, because they are already found in the shade. The shade doesn't mean in a closed room. It means in a shaded area, for example, in a garden. The sunlight does not, the direct sunlight does not reach this area. So the leaves have to grow more in size in order to allow the different waves of sun rays to, or sunlight to fall on them. These are several adaptations to allow as much sunlight as possible to reach the leaves. Now, let me put this picture to the chloroplast. I told you before that I'm going to show you the structure of the chloroplast. I'm going to show you a hand-drawn structure, our hand-drawn chloroplast, and what we can see by using the electron microscope, because the chloroplasts are organelles. They can never be seen by the light microscope. That's why we use the electron microscope in order to see what's found inside. Now, this is a hand-drawn picture for the chloroplasts. This is a chloroplast, of course, and it is surrounded by two membranes. This is the outer membrane, and this is the inner membrane. These stacks that look like discs arranged one over the other, these are the parts that contain chlorophyll. Okay? And in between, bathed in, these stacks are bathed in a certain fluid that contains protein. You don't have to know names or in details. In older or in AS, you are going to learn, of course, these names. But what about the structure that we see under the microscope? And again, this is hand-drawn, but we see it like this under the microscope, of course, the electron microscope. Because the electron microscope is going to show the internal structure or the detailed structure of these very fine organelles. Again, as you can see, these are two membranes that surround the chloroplast. Here are the stacks that contain chlorophyll, okay? And of course, when the starch is formed, it is stored in grains. We call them the starch grains. And this is the liquid that I just told you about that is protein in nature. It is surrounding these stacks from everywhere.